Good morning, everyone. My name is Stefano. Thank you for joining this webinar. We're going to wait a little bit more just to see if more people are joining, and we will start the webinar shortly. If you're able to see my screen, if there's any issues that you're noticing, if you're not able to see the screen or you notice any issues, please share it on the comment section. All right, I think it's safe to start. We have about 18 people right now that I see on the board. Okay, thank you for joining again. My name is Estevno Bime. I am a system engineer with Veeam. I work with the customer success team, and I am accompanied today by my colleague, Chris Grady. Today, we will be doing a technical onboarding about Veeam ONE. Again, if you have any questions while I'm performing this webinar, feel free to ask them on the comment section. Um, Today we will discuss we will have an introduction about the product. We will discuss what the product is about. What can it do to your environment? We will talk about its architecture and core components. We will discuss its main tools, Veeam ONE clients and Veeam ONE web clients. We'll talk about the user interface and the different resources that you can use with it. All right, so what is Veeam ONE? Veeam ONE is a tool that gives you complete visibility over your backup infrastructure, but also your protected environment. That can be your hypervisor, a VMware hypervisor, Hyper-V, the machines that you're backing up using physical agents, but also your Office 365 environment. It helps you monitor and report that environment and identify issues before they become a bigger problem. Of course, it also gives you a lot of insights into the Veeam backup application itself. On this page, we are seeing how the product is sold. Veeam One is part of the advanced data platform package, which comes with Veeam backup and replication and Veeam ONE. As you can see here, we have a couple of features that are included. Of course, the ability to backup and verify as well as recover your data. A bunch of malware detection tools, and what we are going to discuss today, the analytics, discovery, and reporting uh, features of Veeam ONE. This page show us the type of environment that is supported. We can monitor VMware, vSphere, VMware Cloud Director, Microsoft Hyper-V, and the Azure Stack HCI. As far as Veeam products that are supported, you can use this to integrate and monitor Veeam backup replication, the version that are listed here, and those versions of Veeam for Office 365. Our products come in two licenses, at least the ones that are involved in this in Veeam ONE with Veeam ONE. We have per sockets licensing, which is our legacy model of license. We uh, track the number of physical sockets that you have on the hypervisor and assign a number of licenses based on that number. Um, this allows you to back up or protect all of the machines within the host. Um, and that's the only uh, license you need to really cover all the machines within the host. This license type is no longer sold. We still honor it with customers that did not switch to the new type of license, VOL. So if you do have that type of license, you will still be able to use it with Veeam ONE. And the more familiar type of license is VUL. This is what is used today. This is the most popular licenses, and this protects per machine that you are. It's licensed per machine that you're protecting. So in order to protect a certain number of machines, you will be able to you'll need to get the total number of the machines you want to protect, and we will license you for them. But again, it doesn't matter here whether you're using the sockets or the VOL license for Veeam ONE, for Veeam backup replication, where we'll be able to cover Veeam ONE for each. There's two types of licensing. There's a perpetual license, which is the permanent license. This allows you to use the products forever, but um, it does come with support and maintenance on a period that you can purchase on a period. Minimum is a few months to years. If those support and maintenance periods are expired, then you might still be able to use the license, but you won't have the products, but you won't have any support for it, and you won't be able to update as well. We also have the subscription license. This one includes production support and maintenance agreements for the full term of the license. Normally, you can get it from 1 to 3 years. Well, it's usually is sold for from 1 to 3 years, but the maximum prepaid term for a subscription license is 5 years. We will now talk about the architecture of Veeam ONE and its core components. All right, so the Veeam ONE server comes in two big components, um, which are the Veeam server itself. This is the that's the central components that collects and process data from several resources. Those resources again can be the Veeam backup application server, your hypervisor. It integrates with Veeam backup application, the virtual infrastructure for monitoring, reporting, alerting, and analysis of your infrastructure. This is what gathers the data to be collected and analyzed. And you have your configuration database that is sort of a repository for all of the data that was collected by the Veeam ONE server for historical analysis and reporting purposes. This is what efficiently indexes and retrieves the data for quick reporting and real-time monitoring. The database can be installed either locally on the same machine where a Veeam ONE server was installed or remotely. I wanted to say something that I might have skipped. Um, it is the fact that you can use VUL licenses or socket licenses to for Veeam ONE, depending on the type of licenses you use for Veeam backup application. But anything Veeam ONE, I mean Veeam Office 365 involved doesn't require a license. Additional components of Veeam ONE are the Veeam ONE web clients and the Veeam ONE clients. Um, the Veeam ONE client is a desktop application that interacts and manage the Veeam ONE environment, interact and manage with the Veeam ONE environment through detail analysis and alerts. Um, so it's sort of our monitoring client where you can see the different infrastructure that you're monitoring, such as the Veeam backup application server, the Hyper-V environment, the VMware environment, the Office 365 environment, and it gives you a detailed um, managing interface for you to track anything that is happening within those environments. You'll be able to see alerts, you'll be able to see some dashboard, you'll be able to monitor specific objects, such as the different components of each of those infrastructure, or their how they're running, how the CPU is working, how the network usage is, if it's healthy, and we'll see a little bit of more a little bit of that in a few. And then you have the Veeam ONE web clients, which is our reporting tool. This is what uh, shows you reporting and monitoring functionalities. You'll be able to generate a report through that, and it's all done through a browser-based interface. This is an overview of the architecture of the product. As you can see here, we have all of the infrastructure that Veeam ONE interact with. Um, the Veeam ONE server is here, along with the Microsoft SQL configuration database. Know that configuration database can be um, SQL Express, which comes by default, or you can connect it to a bigger SQL server, a full-blown SQL, licensed SQL server. Um, the advice is that if you have more than 1,000 VMs to monitor, you should go with the full-blown SQL edition, because the SQL Express might be too small to gather all of that data. So the Veeam ONE server, again, can be installed on the same machine with your SQL database, or it can be different. It does interact with the infrastructure via data log, via logs collection, um, and then use that information to give you um, detail analytics, detail reporting through the Veeam ONE web clients and the Veeam ONE client. You can also use tags to organize and manage a view called the Veeam ONE Business View, which we're gonna get into later on. And you can also leverage our RESTful API to integrate with products such as ServiceNow, or some type of uh, third-party app that can generate maybe mm, additional reports like Power BI, or you know a bunch of third-party analytics tools. So you can use the API to integrate with more tools. We're now going to talk about the installation of the product. It's pretty straightforward. You can install it via your portal. If you go to my.veeam.com, log in to the portal, you'll be able to download the products in a list of product available according to your licenses. This will be the page that you will see. Like I said, you can install everything into one. You can install some of those components separately. Over here, you'll be able to install the license at this step, as well as the credential. Once you've seen a summary of the things that you want to install, you can just click on the install button. Pretty straightforward install process. You can change some of the settings to customize them a bit more, or just do a package install with all of the components installed. You can also decide exactly which one to install. Same thing for the database. You can select to install a new instance of SQL Server, um, and how to connect with it. Or you can use an existing instance of SQL Server if you have a full-blown instance. And same thing for the cache. You can specify path on for which on which Veeam will be doing the installation. As far as collecting data, there's a couple of options. You can do data collection of everything, or just maybe specific backup data only. And here you have a list of the port that needs to be open for. If you hit install, it's good to check for product updates automatically. If you hit install, the product will start the installation process. All right, next we will talk about the Veeam ONE clients. It's one of the two big UI of the product. In the list, when you do the installation, this is the tool that we are talking about right here. Second. Again, this is the monitoring tool. On Veeam ONE, there's a monitoring tool and then there's a reporting tool. This is how it presents itself. On the left here, you have a hierarchical view of the infrastructure that you want to monitor. In this example, we have our VMware environment. You can see it's listed per hosts, and you can click on any object here on the hierarchical view and get additional information about um, a lot of things. You can also list them per clusters and click on the specific cluster to see the information. Same thing with data store. Here we're looking at the virtual infrastructure, which is either the Hyper-V environment or the VMware environment or the machines that you are backing up via agents. You will see a summary here of everything that is happening on that, let's say, host. It will list a bunch of charts showing you how healthy your environment is. And by the way, everything that is discussed here, everything that is shown to you here is based on um, more than 300 alarms that were built around best practices, not only for the um, infrastructure that you're protecting, but also the Veeam backup application. And based on that, it's going to give you a chart on whether the environment is healthy, if there's some things that you should be reviewing. Maybe the alarms ran and it gave us like a warning about something that could be an issue, or maybe something that you need to fix right away because it's like a potential issue that could break your environment. But that's what the alarms are. They really are a bunch of collection that we have honed over the years that scan your environment and uh, check for best practices. Um, Here we have an inventory pane where you can add, for example, the infrastructure that you need to monitor, as well as other settings. We have the hierarchical view of the infrastructure that you're monitoring, and you have a center information pane where it will list just depending on what you have selected here, it will list additional information about what we are looking at. So I was talking about the different views. We have a view about the Veeam backup application. Before you do anything really, you just have to add the components of Veeam that the Veeam ONE will use to collect data. This, in the case of Veeam components, can be the Veeam Backup Application Server or the Veeam Backup Enterprise Manager. So once you click on uh, the setting to, I mean, the button to add an infrastructure, Veeam will pop up this window and have you select the infrastructure that you want to add. For now, we're just talking about Veeam Backup Application, so we'll just click on the Veeam Backup Application, and you'll be able to add the address of your Veeam Backup Application server. Select what server it is exactly, whether it's a Veeam Backup Application Server or a Backup Enterprise Manager. Veeam will install an agent on that server to help collect logs and information about the Veeam backup application server. You'll also provide your credential, and once you hit next, it will add it to Veeam ONE. The Veeam backup and replication view will give you information about not only the server itself, but all of its components. It will provide information about um, components such as the proxies, the repositories, the one accelerators, tape servers, but also an overview of how the backup infrastructure and the jobs are running. You'll be able to see how your storage are being used, how much space you have left on them, how the data is being processed, how much, what's the backup window. So really very detailed information about each of the components within your Veeam backup application server. You'll be able to also to gather or organize that information in weekly or monthly summaries. Um, Again, this is still the Veeam backup application view. This is just a collapse view of the Veeam ONE clients. Uh, if we expand this view, it will show us each name for each view, but this is the Veeam backup application server view. We see the Veeam backup application server logo here. This one will be a VMware infrastructure, and then there's a few other views that we'll come to later on. But as you can see here, for the Veeam backup application view, you will see a summary of the jobs and how they're running. So you'll be able to see them per job type. Here we have the VM jobs, the green uh, chart. I mean, the green section on this chart is showing us the jobs that were successful. Red ones are the ones that failed, and the yellow section is are grouping the jobs that ended up with a warning. And this is interactive. You can click on each of those parts, and it will give you a list of all of those jobs. Uh, it will also show us overview of the repositories, how they're performing, how much space you have left, how much data is the repository capable of storing, and how much of it is being used right now. And same thing for proxies. It will give you the top proxy servers based on transfer data in this example. This other view um, just narrow a bit more on the repository. So once you click on the repository or one of those repository here, you will see the repository view under the Veeam backup application server view, and you will see a bunch of information such as the type of repository that you have available, um, how many full backups or how much full backups is stored on those repositories, how much increments, um, which of them are scale out backup repositories, which of them are just regular object storage. So you'll be able to just see additional detail on the repository itself. Same thing here is shown for the proxies. We have a list of proxies. We have summaries here. You can see different views for the summary. You can see them monthly. I'm going to get to that later on, but you can see the amount of data transfer per day for those proxies. So I was talking about the alarms. There's an entire view for the alarms, and again, that will be discussed in detail later. But the alarms is really the bread and butter of our Veeam ONE clients. This is really what gathers. This is really what all of the data is split into. Those alarms tell you, first of all, what is the alarm about, what is being, what's it's used for, what it indicates, what causes it, and how to resolve it. And as you can see here, we have grouped those alarms in different categories. There's a lot of them about connectivity issues. Maybe something is going wrong on the VMware environment. Software health. This is all about the Veeam backup application. If everything is going running okay, there's a group of alarms that will tell you whether there's something wrong about backups. You know uh, Anything about the Veeam backup application server, such as, for example, what's a good example? The job is not running okay. Um, there's something wrong about how the incrementals are being created. All of those are under software health. You have job status. Okay, this is more about what I was talking about earlier. So whether the jobs are successful or not, if they failed, or if they ended up with a warning. You have alarms around storage capacity. If you're getting close to a full storage, which could be creating problems within the Veeam backup application server. And you also have some alarms about licensing. So those are the general groups that the alarm are categorized under. So this is just more information about the alarms. Really, the goal of the alarm is to warn you about events or issues that could lead into bigger problems, such as data loss, um, or just the Veeam server not running uh, properly. There's a whole alarm, a section about alarms for each of those views. So when you click on the backup infrastructure or your VMware infrastructure view, you'll be able to just click on the alarm that apply to that components, and you'll be able to see exactly what they're for. Um, uh, if they, a bunch of those alarms for that specific components were um, are healthy, or maybe you need to look at them to make sure you fix certain things before it becomes a problem within the environment. You can always edit the alarm. You can change some of the settings, the sensitivity of it, how often it runs, what it applies to. If let's say there was an alarm that showed that there was a problem and gives you a red to signify an error, it may eventually um, resolve if the problem itself in itself is resolved, or you can suppress the alarm if it's, let's say, something that's not really a problem that you know of, that you understand why the alarm pop up with an error, but that is not a problem for your environment. You can also edit the alarm so that it doesn't ring. Um, and if you know, for example, or you can resolve it if you know that you fixed the issue, or maybe it's something that you that is not important, you can resolve the alarm. You can also create your alarms. You can create your own, or based on some of the categories that we talked about, or you can modify some alarms. You can also just edit the ones that you have, so that they fit your scenario better. And this is a bit of the overview of the alarm settings. Here we have a name for the alarm, and then if you go, I'm not sure this example show us, but if you click on rules, then you can specify how this alarm acts, um, the sensitivity of it, as well as additional settings that you can change. All right, we'll talk about the intelligent diagnostic. So Veeam Intelligent Diagnostic is a feature that allows you to automatically detect and resolve known issues about configuration and performance on the Veeam Backup application server. So it just analyzes logs from your Veeam Backup application server and trigger alarms with recommendation to address potential issues without having to contact the technical support team. It uses signature for that, that defines common issues that were previously investigated by the tech support team. And these signatures are stored in the Veeam ONE database and can be updated automatically or manually. It also uses a Veeam ONE agent to collect the data from Veeam Backup application. And this is an overview of the way that it works. First, when the intelligent diagnostic um, process starts, the Veeam ONE agent collects data from the Veeam Backup application server, send it to Veeam ONE. Veeam ONE analyze that data and send it back as a compressed log file. Then the Veeam ONE agent parses the actually, I'm sorry, I think it's the other way around. Veeam ONE send a comment to Veeam ONE. Okay, there's a comment that is sent first, and then Veeam ONE agent send back the logs. The Veeam ONE server parsed the log data for known exceptions and error messages by comparing it to signatures, right? And then from there, if there's a known issue that is found, Veeam ONE triggers an alarm with recommendation and knowledge base article to fix the issue. And this is an example of the resolution. Veeam will indicate a KB article to fix the issue. And if you are contacting technical support at some point, you can actually forward them the signature information so that they can, investigate further. If you have bottleneck issues within the backup data flow, you can use performance chats to further down what could be the issue, to narrow down what could be the issue. On the infrastructure view, so this is the backup and replication view. You can see a performance of the server. It can be a server, it can be a proxy per CPU usage. You can click on memory, see the same thing, performance on memory, of the memory. Same thing for disk, and same thing for network usage. So you have like detailed analytics of some of the core components and how they are running. And all of that information can really give you a lot of details about what could be the problem when it comes to performance bottleneck. We also have a view for Microsoft 365. This is an overview of what that view provide as far as information. It gives you a summary of your backup health and repositories, summary of your proxies and how they're performing, CPU, memory disk, and network chat, similar to what we just saw, as well as logs, backup data, and events. This is what the view looks like. You have an overview of the jobs, how they're running, repositories per use space. You can see the number of users, groups, SharePoint site, teams that you're backing up, number of repositories, and overall view of your proxies. The summary gives you, again, different views. You have a monthly summary. This example just are showing us the repository usage. It's showing us when the repository was used, the amount of space left, backup windows, and the amount of data that is protected on this repository. Same thing for proxies. You have when it was used and the amount of transfer data, as well as the backup windows utilization. So this is very similar to the view that we looked at on the Veeam ONE client. On that other, on that the other one was showing us information about the proxy on your Veeam backup application server, as well as the repository. And this just shows us pretty much the same thing for Veeam for Office 365. You have a data protection view that shows you all of the detailed information about the jobs. And it does track things like um, different statistics about the jobs, really. What what type of backup job it is, whether it was successful or not, which proxy is run that job, where is the repository where the data was sent, which repository the data was sent to, the amount of data transferred. And you also have a similar view, but for per repository, where you can see exactly which user is backed up in that specific repository, their email address, when was the last time a job was run for that user, what's the name of the job, the number of restore points you have. And you can use this search bar to search maybe for detail about a specific object. Make sure maybe, I don't know, it's a part of this repository. And once you find it, you can get all of that information that I just mentioned. You also have alarms that apply to it. Like I say, each component has an alarm section, and you can see the different alarms that apply to Office 365. The alarm will give you information about things like connectivity issues related to backup components, um, software issues about the Office 365, the Veeam for Office 365 software itself. Job that fails, ended up with a warning. Storage space, capacity planning, long-running jobs, license and contracts issues. So really, again, those alarms track all type of issues and give you uh, uh, status on whether those issues are okay, or maybe you should they failed and you should take a look at them a bit more closely. All right, I'm gonna now share the presenter role to my colleague Chris, and he's gonna take over from now. I hope this has been productive for you so far. And feel free, again, if you have any questions about anything that I said, to post it on the comment section. Okay, bear with me while I do the transfer over. Hmm.
All right. Is my screen sharing? I believe it is. I'll go ahead and assume it is. Hey, everybody. Chris Grady here. Thank you, Steph, for starting that off. So we've covered a lot of ground so far, and kind of covering the Veeam, different Veeam products and how you can monitor the backup data and the related components of the Veeam applications that you may or may not have. So this will be more focused on, or at least this section will be focused on monitoring of the virtual infrastructure if it's supported. I know there was already a question earlier that kind of hinted at that, and I will get to that on the next slide, or maybe 2 slides from now. All right, so currently in terms of so any type of supported hypervisor you or even agents, you'd be able to run reports and monitor from the Veeam backup replication section of Veeam ONE. But in terms of like monitoring individual VMs or hosts or clusters and that kind of stuff, um, it would really be VMware, vSphere or vCenter and Hyper-V. And that's why I kind of put the other platforms supported with an asterisk, because we do support like HV and Proxmox, but more so as it relates to Veeam as opposed to monitoring live VMs. But those are roadmap items, so maybe the next video I'll be able to say yes. So anyway, so kind of a high level view, and then as we get more into it, and this will make more sense as you see the visual, but like these are the different types of views that you can have of your actual production infrastructure, as well as what we've um, of like kind of the reflection of it within Veeam. So dashboards and infrastructure gives you a summary of like the clusters, the hosts, VMs, data stores, so kind of like every level of that. And we'll kind of define what I mean by summarizes and dashboards. Alarms and data protections. We've already kind of described the alarms, and we'll go into like how to tune the alarms and things like that. Especially with like the virtual infrastructure that tends to need more tuning than the Veeam backup in terms of limiting false positives. Although you may end up needing to tune both a little bit. That's where alarm modeling comes in. So performance charts. Yeah, I mean, you can look at like some of the previous slides gave a summary of it, and we'll go more into in later slides, but you can get an overview of some of the resource usage at every level of the infrastructure, whether it be like host VM, and, mostly like cluster host VM, and then you can see some information about data stores as well. Well, you can definitely see metrics on data stores. Top objects and hardware, that can be useful if you're trying to do some capacity planning or load balancing between hosts in a cluster in your like production environment. You can view that through Veeam ONE, as well as hardware health. And guest insights, and we'll go more into this a little bit, but with supported hypervisor running supported systems, with authentication, we can actually have insight into running processes and services, start, stop them, and even create alarms with remediation or automated actions based on that, or just alerting. So that will make more sense as we kind of individually address all these. So the dashboards first, so summarizes host VMs and data stores. So this is kind of what so if you were to select in the Veeam ONE desktop client virtual infrastructure, this would be kind of like the left pane view. The highest level would be if you're just coming in for the first time, like if you click virtual infrastructure, that would be like everything if you have multiple of these centers or something. Or if you want, you can kind of click at what level you want to. And then to the right of that, that's not in the screenshot, you'll see more options, but obviously the root node would be the vCenter. So then within that, you have your containers. Your resources would really be like VMs. In this case, this is probably from our lab, so there's a lot of replicas, but in your scenario, you'd probably be wanting to monitor your production VMs, but same idea. Not just VMs, clusters, yeah, and you can also data stores and stuff like that. And we'll get to business view. Um, okay, so this would be like what was to the right of that previous screenshot. It looks like we're looking at the root level. So this would be like kind of a summary of an entire, probably a cluster. And this is kind of just a more of a glance view if you're already up to date and you're trying to see what's happened maybe since last night or since you last looked. If you go to alarms or tasks, if you go to alarms and like hit repeat count by twice, you can see like throughout the entire history what's been triggered the most in terms of alarms. But these are the most latest. It's kind of a good quick view to see. Um, and let's see what else. So this would be like one host as opposed to the cluster. Same concept, but you're just looking at something a little bit more specific. And so it just depends what you're looking for, but all these things would be relevant depending on what exactly you're trying to find out or what alarm was triggered or so on. That's why it's good. Sometimes it's good to go at the root level and look at all the alarms if you're just trying to see what's what. But if you're looking for something specific, you can go more granular and to the point. Then this would be the VM level, so you can go into the guest OS. So most of these are the same in terms of like the resource usage, and you can show historical usage too. But the tasks and events are pretty interesting, and the guest OS would be where the process and services are, and alarms would be the alarms triggered uniquely by this VM. Um, so some of this is kind of the same, but just depends on the context. But with the guest OS and tasks and events, that's kind of unique to the virtual machine. Data store, somewhat similar, but just looking at the data stores, probably mostly snapshot stuff and disk space, but there's a lot of other alarms too, but those are some of the more common ones. Okay, so let's monitor across key metrics. Yeah, this is somewhat of an overview of what we're describing. So you can kind of choose any object, whether it's the root level, an entire host, or an individual VM. You can even drill into certain processes, whatever's relevant for that. In terms of alarms, summary, or performance, if you want to look at like the live CPU, memory, network, data store, and disk, IOPS usage, either live over the last 5 minutes, it's pretty granular with how you want to look at it. And if it from the desktop client, you're not able to see exactly what you want to see, more than likely from the web client, you would be able to run a report more granular. Customization, tailored charts for specific needs and insights, customized performance charts too. Yeah. So you kind of customize if there's not, because there's like hundreds of out of the box reports and alarms. But anything that we do have a way to capture a particular data point on, you can create custom alarms from, or custom reports and alarms from that. So there is a customization aspect, although there are like hundreds out of the box. So I would probably look to see if it's already existing first, but we can always help with that as well, either in the Q&A or via health check, depending on the urgency. Okay, so performance charts. So we're going to look at resources. So it's going to show kind of what's the current usage of resources on this VM. So this is an overview. You can click the individual components and it drills. Let me see it. Yeah. So kind of straightforward, but this area right here will kind of allow you to zoom out or change some of those views if you want to get a more long-term view. It just depends what you're looking for, but the idea is that you have a lot of granularity with what you can choose to see, but this is just kind of the default view. Last hour. A lot of these are going to be kind of the same, but just different components. Yeah, the memory active, consume, pressure, and usage. People kind of define that differently. What we're referring to there is like, in this case, what VMware would, how they use those terms. So again, we can answer those questions in the Q&A or in a health check, but um, it's kind of like an API call that returns what they refer to as that. So there sometimes are questions about what, like memory usage versus memory active or memory consumed. Um, and it's kind of a reflection of what VMware defines it as. In this case, since that's what we're looking at. But if you notice on the left side, Hyper-V is also an infrastructure object on the very bottom. So network, you can kind of look, and this can be helpful, when you're trying to troubleshoot maybe bottlenecks, or maybe another business unit is saying you're saturating their upload link and you want to see if it's Veeam or something like that. A lot of, endless use cases, but um, that would be the idea here, and that would, yeah, so same concept for the rest. Just the only difference would be, by nature because of the type of component that we're talking about. But most of the infrastructure we try to keep as similar as possible to avoid clutter. So vSphere alarms. So previously, so you can set alarms like protected VMs or like VBR related alarms, and those are very useful, especially comparing it to kind of that daily summary of VBR. These are good if you wanted to monitor certain things within, like, like I said, either like host clusters or more likely VMs maybe, or everything. So, and the amount of instances that you have with your advanced license is how many that instances or VMs that you can monitor. Whereas if you have like a VBR at all with any amount of Veeam ONE licenses, you can monitor your entire VBR environment, just to clarify that. So these are some of the alarms. Most of them are kind of pretty straightforward. Some of them are, like immutability state change or possible ransomware activity. Those immutability state change is a VBR one, but possible ransomware activity would be an alarm looking at behavior on a guest OS of a VM. So that's where like tuning the alarms comes into play. But so yeah, so you can look at the alarms here, acknowledge them, which is kind of saying like you're actively working on it. Resolving it means that it has obviously been resolved. Um, and that just kind of keeps it so you don't see a bunch of red or yellow when you come in, unless it's actually relevant or something that needs to get your attention. So here's an example of one. And again, so no environment's the same, so there has to be some kind of out of the box threshold. Every alarm you can either clone, create a custom one, or adjust the existing thresholds. So like if the memory usage is triggered, I mean, it says it, but it's something like over like a 5-minute period of time, if the average amount of memory usage is above 90, that would be considered a warning or error, so that would trigger it. So depending on the nature of the server, sometimes you may want to create different groups of alarms, or if there's one culprit that is just always high on memory and you're aware of that and okay with it, you may want to just exclude that. Or maybe that is a surprise, and then that's an alarm that you would see. But there's a lot of different ones. This is just one of the hundreds that was chosen for this example. And it kind of gives you a description of whatever that particular alarm is. So this one's like storage connectivity lost. Yeah, I mean, when you see something like that, I don't know if you need to read the rest, but the resolution might be interesting. It's definitely worth looking at, depending on if it's something, what your first instinct is. Sometimes you're like, oh, that's something environmental, but try to give you as much info as possible. And this is coming through APIs from the hypervisor that we're monitoring, so it should be accurate information. So now in guest processes, so these are kind of cool. So if you can authenticate into a guest OS VM with like at least like a local admin on that particular, if it's like a Windows machine. So services and processes. So you can, start, stop, restart, You can create alarms based on a service, which I don't believe there's a visual of, but it's like if, if a service isn't running for more than 5 minutes, alert you or run a script to force start it or the actions tab is pretty flexible on that. So it's kind of similar concept with processes. You stop the process, restart it. You can also do that from the left pane, like if you're looking at the entire application, like this pop-up thing would become to the left of that area. Um, so if you were to right click on a particular VM, you can do remote management and connect to it, power it off, reboot it. I don't wouldn't unless you had to hard reset it, but and then under the alarms you hover over that, that's where you can create alarm from that, and then reports will take you to the reports page, but that's a little bit later. Um, so that is pretty interesting. So business view is another view, like we've discussed the Veeam backup replication, the Veeam backup 365, the virtual infrastructure view, of course, and alarms. The business view is another one. It allows you to kind of abstract like groups of VMs or workloads or really any of the different types of objects that you can see here into one unit, either based on like a technical or business or use case perspective. So if it's like the website or something like that, or department, and it's a bunch of seemingly unrelated servers, you can group them together and then use as an object to create alarms and view summaries of. But some of that will make more sense in a second. Uh, so it's a way to kind of abstract things. And also if you use VRO and our Veeam Recovery Orchestrator or the premium product, and you don't, for whatever reason, want to use VM tagging to link that to the recovery locations, you can do that through Business View too. That's kind of another use case. But some people use it uh, just for the inherent value of the ability to abstract it from the systems while still being able to drill into them when you need to investigate. So categorizing, and this is kind of how you would configure the business view. So there's different types of things, and you can, some of them are somewhat how you want to do it in terms of like category. So it's like you can sometimes people will do it by departments. That makes sense. So it'd be a bunch of different machines that would be under that, business unit's budget or whatever their thinking is. And then the purpose or use case, that's why I said like maybe like website, because it's going to be like, SQL Server or like a web server, maybe some bunch of other stuff. So things that wouldn't necessarily be grouped on one host, but you can create a wrapper for it to then link to like create alarms from, or just view a summary and all that good stuff for. But I think there's a visual of what I'm trying to say in a moment. So, but just to kind of give you the different terminology. So objects would be like the actual technical machines that were, applications, or it'd be like VMs usually, or storage. And you can have objects um, as part of multiple groups, of course. So categories, that one's, I don't say use it for whatever you want, but those are probably the two most common, but it is just a category. So usually, in my experience, it would be like the department name or like a use case for a type of application that isn't just like one server, or like they're not like obviously together just by looking at it. But you can kind of use that whatever is convenient for you. Um, yeah, group two. So you can also kind of add another layer between, depending on, especially at scale, that would probably be more. Yeah, so there's groups as well. I don't see those used as often, but um, so yeah, so yeah, okay. So this is so once you've created that, in this case, the category is like VMs with snapshots. Um, but it can be kind of however you want it to be. But this would be the view, and it's similar to like that summary alarms, virtual machines, because you're just adding those machines to that. It's almost like you've created like um, an ad hoc host that doesn't actually exist. Anyway, you get the idea. So you can view alarms, create alarms from that. Like something goes wrong with this group of servers, because usually the business side of things are viewing it from that point of view. So it makes it easier for you to drill into the systems related. So we've already kind of discussed the alarms, virtual machines, performance. Top objects, I can't remember if that was shown, but it essentially just shows, like, let's say you have a bunch of different servers. It will show like the resource usage. So if you're trying to do some load balancing or resource reallocation to optimize it, that's helpful for that. Tasks and events would be um, either guest OS events or events that like alarms and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of same idea here once you drill into one of those. So this is kind of like if you're just looking at it, if you already have it set up, you're caught up to date. Um, and then if you wanted to adjust the categories later, you could. Alarms, we just discussed that. Task events, we've discussed that. So the main thing is just knowing the purpose of it, how to set it up, and then it kind of fits into what you may already be familiar with. But if not, we can definitely help. Um, Yeah, so this is just going by the group. So these are like those different metrics that would be within the business view or underneath the category. So it would be relevant if you wanted to use groups, but the concepts are pretty similar. Just depends on what exactly you're looking for. If there's any specific questions, if I'm going too fast, we can definitely answer after or in the Q&A. So ServiceNow integration. Oh, so that is basically kind of the virtual monitoring and monitoring, and then there's also reporting that we will get to. Um, they're somewhat related, but reporting allows you to have it in a more user-friendly way and like a professional document that you can have scheduled and saved or emailed. So something interesting that's somewhat new, and this is a very high-level view. That QR code at the top right will kind of give you a more thorough description. And again, you can always request a health check if you had more questions, or and the Q&A is always available as well. With ServiceNow, it is a bi-directional integration. So like let's say with the Veeam Incident API, like there's something that you can choose what you want to send those events to ServiceNow, the ticketing system. So like let's say like you set an alarm to where if something doesn't back up, or yeah, if something doesn't back up within um, your RPO that you set, that can create a ticket, or that you can set it to auto generate a ticket through the integration in ServiceNow, and it's bidirectional. So however you resolve that, once it's resolved, if you close the ticket in ServiceNow, that would close it in Veeam ONE or vice versa. So it gives you the convenience of like if you're kind of wanting to see, like you have Veeam ONE all set up the way you like it, but you don't want to jump between different things, especially if most of the investigation and resolution will be done by the ServiceNow team. That allows them to kind of have a single pane of glass while still reaping the benefits of the Veeam ONE integration. Um, so that can be helpful. And again, that article will go with the QR code. I'll stay here a little bit longer in case someone needs to get a picture. Um, but it should be somewhere in blog.veeam.com or community.veeam.com. Again, Q&A, we can definitely answer those kind of questions, but if you use ServiceNow, that might be of interest to you. And VBR also does that, but this is a Veeam ONE webinar. So the Veeam ONE web client, formerly a long time ago known as Reporter, mostly because at one point it was mostly for reports, although that is less and less true each release. We're getting more and more to a true single pane of glass. So Threat Center to start off, similar to the original landing page dashboard, I would say this is a bit more security focused. So the first thing that would catch your eye probably is your scorecard. Um, all four, yeah, I'm not going to say which ones are the most important, but you'd want all those to be high. I would say mutability and they're all important, but you definitely, if you have the top three and the bottom one is not 100%, I probably wouldn't feel that great regardless of what the score says. But this just gives you an idea of like what's in inventory based on security and compliance, which we will discuss a little bit later, I believe. But it's that security and compliance analyzer button in VBR and all the checks for that. In this one they failed 22. That's why the score. That's part of the reason why the score is so low. Although mutability I think is weighted pretty high. So anyway, so that is a big one. Malware detections. If you use the malware detection features in the 12.3 that were really revamped. So that's worth checking out. But even in 12.1 or 12.2, there's some interesting things. Um, if you set locations for the different objects, you can see where those infections appear on a map. You'd have to set locations for that though, but that is customizable. And that icon at the top right of each widget, that's how you would edit that if you wanted to assign things to locations or edit the view, or you have a decent amount of control there. So RPO anomalies kind of speaks for itself. The idea is you want to kind of glance at that and make sure that nothing is unexpected or doesn't seem right. And you can set, again, you can set alarms so you would be proactively aware of that too, but this is kind of just a dashboard. SLA compliance, it's good to be pretty close to 100% compliant. Um, and that SLA is something that you can determine for yourself based on either what you believe or what the business requirements are. Veeam Intelligence. Okay, so that's essentially kind of like Veeam AI in a way. You may have seen that in the VBR. Um, it's the perfect companion for receiving real-time recommendations and answers to technical questions. The idea is that you can ask and and sometimes you have to ask it in different ways to get better answers, like any AI chatbot. But it is pulling from your Veeam ONE database, so at least the information will be accurate. And so yeah, you can kind of type it in like a human-friendly way, and there is an example a little bit that kind of shows you what that looks like if you click that. Yes. So we'll get to the diagram on the left in a moment, but this is like if you click that, this is basically the Veeam Intelligence chatbot. So um, that's what they typed, give clear instructions, you can type kind of however you want, and depending on what you want, you may have to reword it. And each iteration, like any AI, each iteration it'll get better, and we are always open to feedback on that. So yeah, so it kind of tells you exactly what you would need to do if you have an idea of what you're trying to get a report on, but you're like looking through the interface trying to figure out how to actually do it, which I can relate to. So that's helpful. And so then kind of the diagram of how this would work, it does have to reach out to rest-ai.veeam.com. So if you're VBR, if you're using that one or the one we're talking about, if your Veeam ONE server is disconnected or has those ports blocked to the internet, you may want to you'll notice that if you use the web UI, like outside of that server, if it's configured to allow that, as long as that device has 443 out to the internet, then you can still use it. So that's kind of nifty. If you do want to lock down your Veeam ONE server itself, you can still use that from another device if you have, if the other network firewall policies allow that. And yeah, so and then it's just getting signatures and stuff from that one, but just that's what it's reaching out to for its the AI and content delivery. So that is the idea there, and I am probably talking fast, so we will if we finish early, we'll definitely tag team if there's a bunch of questions stacking up. But I think that's one of the more exciting features of 12.3, so I encourage anyone to check that out. So Veeam ONE web client dashboard. So this is like this is kind of originally what you would have landed on when you kind of get into Veeam ONE. They are an assortment of widgets that like contain predefined, and you can edit them or create your own. For VBR and VBM 365, and as I get into one, it'll make more sense what they actually are. But they're similar to the threat center type of widgets, but just more overall as opposed to security focused. So here's kind of what. So we selected Veeam Backup Revocation for this one. So all of these, you can add new widgets. You can if you click that icon at the top right of any widget, you can adjust it slightly. Refresh, of course, is new data. If you wanted to share out this particular dashboard to a user that maybe wouldn't have access to anything related to the Veeam ONE server or like a login to the web interface, you can share that out either like via private link or just open link. Whoever has it, that link will open. So that's kind of nifty if you want to, yeah, there's a lot of use cases for that, but so you can share that out too, as opposed to just viewing it from here. So sometimes it's like like you'll have a request to provide this to someone, so that share button allows that. So these are pretty, this is kind of at a glance stuff. The reports is where you would probably see a lot of this stuff in more detail. But if you're pretty caught up to date with your environment, it's good to come in here and just make sure nothing unexpected happened. Um, and so most of it's pretty straightforward. That backup server looks like it needs attention, but that's the idea. Um, and yeah, okay. So similar for 365. So that was like the next one, the third one over on the right, being back for 365. But you can create new dashboards, and there's a lot of them. We're just kind of giving you an idea how it goes. And again, any Veeam customer would be entitled to a health check if you wanted to dig a bit deeper or had some questions that um, yeah. So 365, so it's kind of similar, give you an overview. A lot of the stuff you can see from the Veeam ONE client, the desktop client, but if you, that's not accessible, or when it becomes all in one, it's just nifty, and you can share this out. A lot of use cases for this. Um, and I think we show, okay. So this would be another one of those, the vSphere hosts and clusters. Yeah, so I've discussed what a lot of these things would mean from when we're looking at the desktop client, but this is maybe a more user-friendly way to look at it at a glance without having to log into that server. Um, and the arrow kind of shows like the trend based on history. So even though that for like top host by memory, that is the highest, uh, it appears to be less so than the last update, just in case you're wondering what that meant. So yeah, you can add dashboards. And so when you click add dashboard, now you're almost looking at like the reporting section in a way, but it's maybe like a simplified version of it. And it does give you a preview of what that it means by that. So you can kind of create, there are some available widgets that you can add that are not default in the dashboard. So that may be worth looking at. It really just depends what you're trying to um, be informed on. And there is that you can search where it says widget name too, or ask us. So and then once you figure out what what metrics to look at, then you would choose like, okay, what's my scope? So everything, that would probably be that, and then how long back do you want to go? In theory, and this is generally true, in theory, the longer you go back, the more accurate the data, but there may be cases where that's not the case. So now reports. So there's a lot of predefined reports, but anything that similar to alarms, anything that we can capture or have API access to see essentially, um, you can create custom reports from that too. Um, Probably best to just ask if it like via health checker in the Q&A, like um, can Veeam ONE report on this if you don't see it in the list. And there is a nice search thing, so you can kind of type like a word or so to see, but we have a few examples to show. So backup monitoring. So when you're first starting off, like you'd probably be doing previews because you're almost tuning the report to how you want it because you're likely going to schedule it. So it's similar. So like unless you want to exclude something or use a different type of scope metric, but if you want to just view and there is, I should say, there's like a workload history report as well. If your environment is not just VMs and you're trying to do a similar thing, this is just the one report we chose, but there's like a lot of them. But so yeah, the RPO would be, what's the maximum amount of time you want to go by without a backup occurring? And so that would make it red or green in the report. So, and you under job types, you can exclude, but let's assume you just want to, or include. I don't know why you'd want to analyze the VM templates as part of this, but you could if you wanted to. And yeah, so then you would typically click preview. It takes a little while to load, as long as, and then it would pop up. As long as it looks good, then you would probably save it and schedule it. and that part is on a later slide. So this is another report that was saved. Um, so the Veeam Backup the Security and Compliance Analyzer is a VBR feature, but it feeds into Veeam ONE because it does check a lot of, I would say, pretty important things, especially if you're more security focused. So you can, the nice thing here is you can actually uncheck things, like, because there's a lot of things in there that, given your, that might be a general best practice to follow for security, but like in your case, you have something else that's just not a concern that it failed, either through the business requirements or like regulatory or insurance or something like that. So you can exclude that so you don't keep that. That's nice. So that way you can actually get alerted on what you want to be alerted on. Um, I can't. I'm explaining that because you can't really see it from the screen, but that's what that drop down is. So you preview that and schedule that, and yeah, so this is what that would look like. So essentially, that you'd want it to be less red, but this is a lab environment. So, but that's the idea is like, and not implemented just means for whatever reason Veeam is not able to detect it, depending on which one triggered that. If you've had in the past, we can maybe answer a question on that or discuss that on a health check. So that's the idea there for this particular report. That's what we pull up. And you can schedule that to run on a periodic basis if you have a requirement or if you just want to make sure you don't overlook anything. And yeah, so each report kind of gives you the first page. Actually, it's worth mentioning because sometimes it's happened where they'll look at the first page and be like, okay, that is very generic information. And sometimes there's like 12 pages and it gets more granular as you go on. So like most documents, the first page is a summary. So as you go on, it will get more granular. It depends on the report. But this, yeah, okay. So like it starts with like, okay, the pie chart, but then you can go into jobs with warnings, how much data was transferred, did it even attempt to retry, what was the warning, and well, you may have to go to VBR or the logs to get a little bit more, but at least that one finished. But um, and it even gives you those little indicators on if the duration trend is up or down in terms of the backup wind, like the duration, although sometimes that's just natural for how the system's used. So, okay, so yeah, so once you have a report, so let's say you have that, you've previewed it, you got a few reports saved that you like, um, then you can schedule those reports to essentially be, well, first you would choose if it's a dashboard, a report folder, a report. We were just talking about reports, so that's what I had in my mind, but you can do that with dashboards as well. So then you're choosing the schedule. How often do you want that to be? The next tab will tell you the delivery method. Most people send it by email. You can save it to like a folder on the network, or both. But usually people would attach it to email. But we like to give as many options as possible, because you never know. Recipients. So if you're doing the saving it to like a file server or something like that, obviously that the path would be what that's for. Or if you do it without the backslash and just put a drive letter, it would be on the machine that Veeam ONE server runs on. That's where it would be stored, like the PDF or Word doc that you're for the report. Well, yeah, if you wanted to, for whatever reason, to run a script after the dashboard save, I'm sure there's some reason, but that's an option. And this is kind of nifty to get a visual of your backup windows. So assuming that you're collecting data properly from VBR, um, you don't have to. I mean, you can see the information from VBR, but it's not nearly as convenient. So this gives you like what those little windows are. And in a real environment, they'd probably be a bit wider, but it kind of shows you like the backup windows. So if you're trying to figure out like, I have tons of, well, if you're trying to figure out like why something's a bottleneck, when it on the surface doesn't appear like it should be, well, maybe there's a bunch of stuff overlapping. A lot of use cases there. So deployment projects. So this is more for like your production virtual infrastructure. So it's kind of helping with like if you're making some changes in like assortment of changes, or if you're going to spin up a new machine, let's see, it's kind of like the alarm modeling, but it's like provisioning modeling within the VMware infrastructure. So let's say you're like, okay, so you're choosing a data store on that vCenter. So this is like a hypothetical scenario. You're not actually deploying anything. You're making sure that if you were to do it, that you're not going to have any issues. It's trying to prevent an issue before, if there would be one. So you would add whatever you're trying to do. Let's just say new VM on a host that maybe is borderline tight on resources. So you'd be kind of simulating with that VM that you'd be eventually actually spinning up. Um, Allocate the amount of resources that you would actually do, so you can get an accurate test here. Then you would put the host that will be hosting it, the information there, so it has all the relevant information to give you an accurate simulation or estimation. And then thresholds is like, because it's not, is it like will it work, but it's like at 100% all the time, or like, so you can kind of set it at like what you'd like it to be at, and then see if it passed, which is pretty nifty. Um, if you're tight on resources or something like that. And that was kind of the example I used, but that's kind of cool. So that there's alarm modeling if you're trying to change alarms and see if the change you just made to the thresholds will prevent false positives without waiting to see if you get false positives. Same concept for this, but it's for deployment scenarios in your production environment. Um, so the REST API is it's an interesting thing. We through Swagger you can essentially build your own. You can pull data from this and integrate it into something else, or build it into like a cool website. That QR code at the top right will I personally think that's a good blog post to read if this catches your eye. But if there are questions, again, we can answer them to the best of our ability within the time. And any Veeam customer does have health checks for these. Although some of the REST API, like in term, well, yeah, so that's an interesting feature. And that QR code will tell you a bit more. And the next slide, I'll tell you a bit more. So it does use Swagger. Uh, client server model. It's just kind of like where you would be initiating these REST API commands, and it kind of has the documentation for it. If if it's an issue on our end with the functionality, that definitely would be supported. There's some experimental support when it's uh, like writing it all for you, but it definitely will work, and we can advise. So Veeam ONE web client configuration. Okay, so this is like if you're just setting it up, or if you're doing something via our own, wanting to push the collection. So, so data collection is essentially like, so Veeam ONE is pulling potentially from a lot of places, but definitely from VBR. So you can schedule it. It's going to be, you want it to be scheduled to do it periodically, so you have updated data, maybe not too much to where you're overloading the system. Um, but if you need to do something ad hoc, you can just click start now. Um, and that will pull in all the data that ultimately shows mostly the Veeam backup and replication monitoring and reporting side. Um, well, for the VBR servers, for the host, obviously that would be that side. So event logs is like the logs of what's happening. So if you click start on data collection, you'll see that as like a pending task, and if there's an issue, then that under task name you can click that hyperlink, and it hopefully will give you useful information. Usually it does, like a port's blocked, or the VBR system is busy right now. So check the event logs will apply. Yeah. So if you want to be cool and have your own logo at the top, for your reports, which that actually, I mean, that is a nifty feature, especially if you have to like provide it in some sort of like um, regulatory context or something like that. But anyway, so you could put your logo at the top, or essentially an image at the top of these reports. Um, and you can integrate it with Microsoft SQL Server reporting services as well, if you so desire. So these are like timeout set. There's a couple different things. So idle, yeah. So timeout, um, and then maximum number of users, login sessions per user. So I don't know if you really, unless you use one account for everything, I don't know if I'd really want that more than one. But so previous login attempts and logging in, that is up to you. But most of these are pretty straightforward. It's just like the timeout period if you're just sitting at the dashboard before it logs you out for security reasons. Well, Veeam Intelligence. It, yeah, it's not really on the slide, but there's not a whole lot to configure there unless you have some particular network or security things that you need to work around, but we can answer questions about that. So additional resources beyond kind of switching gears here, but just some interesting things that you may want to know about. So you've probably heard about our hands-on labs. They're always being updated, or they're often updated with new things as we develop new things. So you may notice, you may not have seen some of these before, and so maybe that first one, that threat center, if that was interesting and you want to test it out without having to install it in your environment, connect it to all your production systems first. Um, Essentially like a web app simulation of that, and it gives you like a guided instruction through how to configure it. It's pretty helpful. And there's a lot of those. Um, and I'm going fast because if that's the website for it, and the QR code will take you to just kind of the landing page for the hands-on lab experience. And that's where you can choose all of these. And essentially you put in your information, and it will, sometimes it takes a little while, it just depends. It's usually pretty quick, and then you'll get an email with your lab is ready, and then you can open the link to the web app and test out the thing, test out the feature or application that you're wanting to see. So that's so if you're wanting to become a VMCE, which if you know Veeam is a primary responsibility of yours, or if you just want to learn more, definitely the class itself and being able to pass the test is a good way to ensure, especially the most recent version, is a good way to ensure that you know what you're doing with at least VBR. And so yeah, so structures on demand. I will have to verify which 100 countries those are, but we can definitely verify if there's any questions about that. It does cover some theory and labs. Um, and that website right there will kind of take you to the landing page if you'd like to see like the different learning centers or the different options, because you do have to take some form of accredited training, whether through us or a third party, before taking the exam itself. But I would recommend that even if you didn't have to. Um, and these are, some are directly related, some are just general interesting links that you might find helpful. Um, Within the, if you go to bp.veeam.com, there should be within there the Veeam ONE database calculator, although it is more for estimation purposes. And as someone alluded to earlier, if well, I don't want to, yeah, if once it's on Postgres, if and when this roadmap, it may not matter as much, but you may still want to know. But there's a lot of other good calculators outside the context of just the database for Veeam. That's a cool website, the top one. And Help Center is that's kind of landing page for all of our official documentation for our different applications. Veeam ONE would be included in there. The best practice guide, that one says VBR. If you remove those three letters, it would kind of take you to the landing page for that, and you can kind of go from there to the application. Then some KB articles, R&D forums, and then the community forums. They're both valuable in different ways. I would check out both. Communities forum is a little bit newer, I think. So that's what I figure that would be worth mentioning. So those are good resources, although you know, of course, if it's a break fix within the SLA agreement, you do have technical support access. We do have quite a bit of time left, so if there's some Q&A, we can answer some of those. And if something pops up after today, uh, just feel free to reach out to one of your reps and we can get a call scheduled with an engineer. And that will be the end of this slide, but I'm going to flip over to the Q&As. Oh, well, maybe there isn't a salesman on it. Yeah, so that is all we had for today. So if you had any last second questions, we certainly have time, so we can sit here for a few minutes if you'd like. Give it about 45 seconds and then probably going to call it. But again, if something pops up right after this and you have a question, um, just reach out to one of your Veeam representatives, or someone at Veeam essentially, and request like a health check or access to an engineer. Or, oh, we got something. Maybe it's in the chat. I see somebody raising their hand. Would you mind typing it in the Q&A or the chat section? I'm going to assume you're typing. All right. Well, if anything pops up later, feel free to reach out. We definitely don't want to leave you hanging, but it doesn't sound like there are any questions. And I appreciate everybody's time today for joining. I hope you got some value out of it today. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one.